This week, I want to talk about summary, paraphrase, and direct quotes, which are three different ways that you can support your own ideas in your writing. Before you watch this video, I'd like you to pause and make sure that you read the short essay called Big Box Stores Are Bad for Main Street, and you can find that on page 59 of your Rules for Writers book. This video series is going to be broken up into three parts. The first video will give an overview and talk about summary. The second video will focus on paraphrase, and then finally direct quotes. So to begin with, there's a difference between summary, paraphrase, and direct quotes. When we use summary, we are rewriting the author's main points in our own words. We're usually taking large amounts of information and distilling it down into a smaller unit of information. And we use summary if we're trying to express the ideas that someone else has produced in a longer work, such as a chapter, an essay, or a book-length work. Paraphrase is a little bit different. It's similar to summary in that you are using your own words. You're not quoting the author. But in a paraphrase, you're restating the author's words in your own in approximately the same amount of space. So we're not taking a larger amount of information and distilling it down to just its key points. We're taking the same amount of information and we're just rephrasing it into our own words. And in the subsequent videos, we're going to talk about why we would do that and how to do that in such a way that we avoid plagiarism. The last piece of support that we can use is direct quotes, and that is, of course, using the author's own words. So let's move forward and talk about what are the keys to writing a good summary. The information in this presentation, of course, comes from your Rules for Writers textbook, but I want to just highlight this page. One of the keys to writing a good summary is, first off, making sure that your reader knows that it is, in fact, a summary. And the way we do that is by stating the title and the name of the author in the first sentence or two of the summary. We also want to make sure that we've communicated the author's thesis. That is, what is the main point or the main idea that the author is trying to communicate? All of those things should come early on in your summary. As you're writing, it's important for us to maintain a neutral tone. We don't want to demonstrate bias either in support or against what the writer is saying. We want to be as objective as possible. It's also important that we present only the writer's ideas, and that we do that using a third-person point of view. So you can say things like, the author argues, or if you were to use their last name, Taylor argues, Taylor suggests, here Taylor emphasizes, all those kinds of words that essentially means the writer says or the writer writes in order to communicate that. We want to make sure that we're also keeping the focus on the text. We don't want to add our own ideas or opinions into the summary. That's going to confuse our reader and make it seem as though our ideas are the writer's ideas, and that's not what we're doing when we write summary. We want to put all or most of the summary in our own words. It's okay to have a phrase or a quote, a short sentence, but make sure that if you're doing that within your summary, that you're putting quotation marks around it and you're including the page number in parentheses. And remember that we don't have to communicate everything that the writer is saying. We're really limiting ourselves to presenting just the text key points. So let's take a look at some examples. Following your reading of the essay on Big Box Stores Are Bad for Main Street, this example also comes from your Rules for Writers textbook, and it reads, in her essay, Big Box Stores Are Bad for Main Street, Betsy Taylor argues that chain stores harm communities by taking the life out of downtown shopping districts. Explaining that a community's soul is more important than low prices or consumer convenience, she argues that small businesses are better than stores like Home Depot and Target because they emphasize personal interactions and don't place demands on communities' resources. Well, right there in just the beginning of the summary, what we have is the title of the essay, Big Box Stores Are Bad for Main Street. We have the author's name, Betsy Taylor, and then we have her main idea or her thesis. What is she doing? She's arguing that these chain stores are harmful to small communities and they take the life out of downtown shopping. The next set of details just illustrate or just relay the author's key points. And as the summary continues, we get some more key points with a small bit of quotation peppered in there. To continue, Taylor asserts that big box stores are successful because, quote, we become a nation of hyper consumers. Although the convenience of shopping in these stores comes at the expense of benefits to the community, she concludes by suggesting that it's, quote, not quote, anti-American to oppose big box stores, because the damage they inflict on downtown shopping districts extends itself to America. So what I want to highlight here is, again, the use of the signal phrases that indicate to the reader that we are summarizing someone else's words. So we see that here where the writer writes, Taylor asserts. And then, as I've said, there are a few borrowed direct quotes that are built into the summary. We've become a nation of hyper consumers, and we know that it's a direct quote because it's in quotation marks, and we get, of course, the page number, and then we get, again, a phrase that is used throughout the original essay, anti-American, so that is in quotation marks as well. Let's take a look at another example. So here's an example of an original source. We're going to go ahead and read the original source, and then we'll take a look at what the summarized version looks like. A question that is often posed to the NOAA Marine Debris Program is how much debris is actually out there. The MDP has recognized the need for this answer, as well as the growing interest and value of citizen science. To that end, the MDP is developing and testing two types of monitoring and assessment protocols. One, rigorous scientific survey, and two, volunteer at sea visual survey. These types of monitoring programs are necessary in order to compare marine debris, composition, abundance, distribution, movement, and impact data on national and global scales. So we want to repackage this information, but distill it down into just the key points. So we don't need all the information that is in this text. We want to distill it down to just the key points. So here we go. Here's a summary. Having to field citizens' questions about the size of debris fields in the Earth's oceans, the Marine Debris Program, an arm of the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, is currently implementing methods to monitor and draw conclusions about the ocean's patches of pollution. We still have the main idea of this text that the NOAA program is wanting to make this information more accessible to people, but what we didn't include this time around is what are the things that NOAA is doing in order to make the information more accessible to people. What we've left out is the 1 and the 2. That's okay for our purposes with a summary because the main idea is still being communicated to readers. Summary can be very useful for you when you are writing your own compositions if you want to take the ideas of someone else and insert them into some of your paragraphs for support. The next video in this series is going to talk about paraphrasing.